Here's a nice little tube caddy that was also included. I used to like these things. I still think they look cool, but from a practical standpoint, at least for the kind of stuff I do, they're just not working for me anymore. Because I work into a wide range of stuff from the 20s through the end of the tubes, I can't even come close to fitting all the types I might need in one caddy. And I don't want to have stacks of caddies around, and I can't see what's inside of them, which is why I switched to using those transparent plastic bins I showed a while back. But at any rate, let's take a look at what's in here. I've already taken a peek, so I had some idea. Most of them are used. A bunch of them down here are unboxed. A lot of these, it looks like, oh, they're new box tubes, but no. Someone recycled old boxes and put masking tape and wrote the tube designators on them. I think everything on this side is used, and a bunch of these, half these boxes are empty. That being said, this is chock full of good TV tubes. I've already used a few of them in projects. The Predicta tubes, for example, like a 6DQ6, that's a horizontal output tube for a 17-inch Predicta. So yes, there is good stuff in here. Not a lot of duds like you sometimes find in tube caddies where all the good stuff's been picked over. No, there's no high-end, high-power audio output tubes or anything like that. But for like everyday kind of stuff I need for TVs, this is chock full of 6DR7, a couple of them horizontal. That's the vertical output tube used in Predictas. 6CG7, that's a horizontal oscillator tube used in Predictas. So, good find. And yes, they're used. Some of them are used, so I'll have to double check them before I use them. And as far as tube caddies go, this is in pretty good shape. It's probably a bit newer than some of the others I've encountered. They're cheaply made. It's plywood, well, at least it's dovetailed, and then covered in Tolex. Typically, these start falling apart. These are just masonite of some sort. The leather straps start falling apart. The hinges get rusty. But this is not bad. Alright, let's keep it moving. Next up, a tube tester. It's a little worse for the wear on the outside, similar to a tube caddy. These are made from, I presume, plywood underneath these with Tolex, and this is deteriorating. I think I can at least stop it by getting some contact cement on there and pressing that back down. Alright, so what is it? Well, it says Hickok on it. A serial number. But can't tell what it is for sure until we open it up. It is a model 800. If you've been watching me for a while, you may recall I have a Hickok 600A. I had a 6000, which I sold. This falls in between. This is an 800. I'm a little torn. So the 600 I have, I paid top dollar for it because I wanted to have one good, solid, reliable, restored, calibrated tube tester. However, it can't do everything. It can't do compactrons. It can't do, they call them Novar or Noval or something. 9-pin bases, but they're larger than the miniature 9-pin. This can. But it also can go all the way back to the 4-pin. So I think this has one of the largest spans of tubes. As far as like this can do tubes from the 20s through the 70s, something like that. Not everything. I don't think it has a socket for new Vistor, for example, but then again, I've never worked on anything that needed one, so I'm not too concerned about that. But compactrons, yes. I have a couple testers that can do them, but they're kind of minimal emission type testers, whereas this is mutual transconductance. It's very similar to the 600A I have, but it's got a bit more stuff. The basic circuitry, though, is the same, where it uses a Type 83 tube and a 5Y3, and that's it. I think Hickok patented that technique for doing mutual transconductance, and they used it in testers for quite a while. One big improvement in this, at least I believe it's a big improvement, is the shorts test. In the 600, it does it similar to a lot of older tube testers where there is a neon bulb and you rotate a switch through various positions. And if the light stays on, you've got a short on that element. This also has a switch that you run through. It's called leakage, though, and there's no neon bulb. You read it off the meter. This can you do this for shorts, and also I believe this does grid leakage or secondary emission, which the 600 I don't think does at all. And I believe this shorts tester is more sensitive. And also this starts to get into semiconductors where you can do diodes and basic transistors, probably just a germanium type. I don't really care so much about that. I have other things I can test semiconductors with. But at any rate, it seems to work okay. I have not looked inside. I should run through all that and calibrate it and whatnot. I'll do that in a separate video. I think there's tubes. Also, the roll chart works. My 600A, when you get towards the ends, it's really, really hard to rotate. This one is pretty fluid. And he did include a manual, which I believe has a whole bunch of pages of... oh, wow, this is just... I was going to say, I thought, because there's so many pages, it had some supplemental tube types that aren't on the roll chart, but no, this is all how to use it, and schematics and calibration and theory of operation and all kinds of good stuff. There are a couple pages, I think, of some specialty tube types. I don't even recognize what the heck these are. A K54B, a 60R30G, 67A. I don't know what these are, maybe foreign tubes. Oh, these are ballast tubes. Okay. That's something else I don't really deal with. I have used it. I tried it out. It seems to work. At least all the basic functionality works. Again, I'll go through and calibrate it. So this was definitely one of the things I really wanted out of this little batch of items. And there was another tube tester, which I'll bring up now. Here is the other tube tester. When I saw his ad, I immediately had to Google Simpson tube tester because I had never seen anything like this before. I didn't know Simpson even made tube testers. Makes sense since they were a large maker of test equipment. Just never encountered this before. I didn't know what the model number was, but after looking at a few images, I narrowed it down and figured out that it was a model 330, which is stamped here on the Bakelite, and the photo was too small to see. It's an oddball tube tester. It's gorgeous. The entire front is Bakelite. I've been slowly gathering bits of info about it because there's really not a whole lot online. There's very few examples, very few photos. Hickok, those are classics. There are dedicated websites, just each model, where you can really find all kinds of info about them. Not so much this. I found a few instances on the Antique Radio Forum where people say, hey, I found a Simpson 330, it looks really cool, what can you tell me about it? And the response seemed to be pretty consistently that they look cool, but don't bother using it. But it's a dynamic mutual conductance tube tester. It's like the Hickok. It looks cool, and why wouldn't you want to use this? Well, when I found the manual, I found one of the reasons why is the calibration procedure, the theory of operation, and so on is really skimpy and confusing, especially the calibration procedure. So I got the impression that it doesn't work that well, and it doesn't calibrate very well, and the meter does not read directly in micromos. It just has replace weak, fair, good, 0 to 140. The Hickok also has an English scale of good, bad, but if you want, depending on how you set up the switches, you can actually read the micromos. You can't with this. The circuit's a little goofy too, I presume because Hickok patented their technique. This uses an oscillator to make AC. I think it has a 12 AX7 and one other tube in there. I forget, like a triode amplifier or something like that. Basically, it has an oscillator and then an amplifier, or a couple amplifiers, depending on what range you're on. You need to calibrate that oscillator to be a certain frequency and a certain amplitude, according to the directions as best I could understand them. And I think that's where part of the problem lies. It's an unregulated power supply, and when you seal this back up, and when you're using it, you have no way to see what the oscillator output level currently is. And it's not the easiest thing to keep opening this up to check it. So, at any rate, it's very pretty. It's Bakelite. It's a little dull. I did try doing some test polishing down in here, and I think it's going to clean up beautifully. Let's talk about the cabinet. So I found not a whole lot of examples online, but I found some. And there was one recently for sale on eBay. The one on eBay and a few of the photos I saw, this came in a Tolex cover cabinet, very much like the Hickok I just showed, with his hinged lid that would close and all. But I also saw some sold that were just the panel. I got the impression, like, could you buy just the panel and put it in your own enclosure? Well, I believe that's what happened here. Whether or not they had the original enclosure, I don't know. But I think this is custom. And it's very nicely done. I believe it's solid maple, or maybe oak. It fits in there beautifully, nice angled. It's been well joined and sanded and finished. It has some very nice rubber feet on it, but there's no label, there's no name. It looks like the bottom's plywood. There's no indication of anything anywhere, and there's no provision for a lid. Now, the gentleman I got this from said that this had been used in a plant of some such sort where they tested some tubes that were used in some of the equipment on the assembly line or something like that. So that may be why they've had it in a custom enclosure. What I find amazing is that this is decades old. There's no provision for a lid. How did this not get damaged, scuffed, cracked, chipped, at least sun-faded? Maybe it was retired decades ago and kept in a dark closet. I don't know. Bakelite's pretty impervious to stuff, but UV will break it down and make the surface get rough and kind of cloudy. And that didn't happen here, so I'm lucky in that regard. I also found out that this roll chart, which has a beautiful action on it, is optional. And you see it's a separate piece here, so you could buy it without that. I have not looked inside. I'll do that in a separate video, but I'll just run through briefly, because it's odd. You may be looking at this meter and thinking, hey, is that broken? Because, let's see if I can get out of the glare here. Normally, you'd have your 0 and your needle would be over here when it's turned off. This is correct. When it's off, the needle is hard to the right and the good. When you plug this in and turn it on, the needle swings over this way. And for the line adjust, you tweak it so that it's on 0 after you put your tube in before you test it. Kind of strange. And so that's, like I said, the confusion about how this works, how to calibrate it, and so on. It uses a circuit that nobody else uses or nobody else used. So the entire front is Bakelite, switches, everything, and these are all intact and in great condition. Got a whole bunch of controls. So unlike the Hickok and many other testers that have a series of rotary switches, this has thumb wheels, which is pretty nifty. So you have to look up your tube. It tells you what to set all these to, and you can run through them. And there's also some push buttons you set for various functions. The way you test the shorts and so on, it's all a little different, a little weird. At least the filament voltage selector is pretty straightforward. On bias and range, that's like the bias in English on a Hickok tester, so that at least makes some sense. The way you actually test the tube is odd. You select the plate load resistor with a combination of these push buttons. To test the tube, you hold down this button. And as soon as you let go, it stops the test and resets the plate load resistors. These other controls, say you've set a bunch of stuff and you're ready to test a different tube type, you push this button, resets everything, sets all these back to 0, pops all these up, which is pretty nifty. It's nice that it's still working very, very smoothly. Now, if you've been following my videos, you may recall that I made a dedicated tube testing workbench. I was thinking about using my 600A as the tester that's always out and ready to go, but now I think if I can get the 800 all tuned up, that will be the one that's the most versatile, accurate tester I have. I'd like to put this one out for the eye candy effect, but it's old. I think this came out in the 40s, maybe even late 30s. It doesn't do any of the newer types. But at least this is one of the newer. They made this for a few years. This is one of the newer incarnations. See how there's plugs here on the big light? Those can be, or they could, at the factory, they could take those out and wire it up for other sockets. The earlier versions do not have a 7 and a 9 pin. This one does at least. So if you get the really early versions, it can only do the 4, the 5, the 6, 7, loctal, octal. And at some point they added acorn tube support. And then the later versions have a 7 and 9 pin. I don't think there are any versions that got around to using these for anything. So it's newer, but it's nowhere near as new as that 800A. It can't do compactrons or certainly no transistors or diodes or anything like that. So it's somewhat limited in its functionality. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. For now, I want to open it up, try to get it working properly. It kind of sort of does. I have powered it up. It kind of sort of works. I'll plug it in and turn it on so you see how the meter action goes. So this is your line adjusted power switch. So right now it's off. I'm going to turn it on. At some point this swings over. I may have to set it up first. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, I had to wait for the tubes to warm up. So let's see. Can you guys see that with the glare? But this meter is just at the perfect angle that it catches the overhead lights so badly. Okay, there you go. So, I think that's all because we're going to get. So when you turn this on, set that to 0. And if you set this up for a tube type and put in the tube and it starts drawing current, the needle will move a bit more. So you have to adjust this. Make sure that's on 0 before you actually test the tube functionality. I was disappointed to see people on antique radio forums say, like, just a shelf queen, don't even bother trying to use it. I'm going to try using it. I'm curious to see. And I'll compare this to like a Hickok and see if, if one says it's weak, does the other. If one says it's very good, then, in other words, do they agree, more or less? Okay, now we have something that somehow I managed to avoid in my life, which are pocket TVs. I think these first came out in the late 80s, 90s at some point. I've never owned one, I've never used one, I've never held one. Well, now I've got a couple. So let's see, we have a TV30 Casio with a flip top. And then there's a Sony Watchman. So, it's my understanding, I have seen some videos and I know a bit about the technology in these. So I believe these use like a lollipop CRT. So the surface that we're looking at right here, that is the phosphor. Well, normally in a picture tube, like this old school one, electron beam comes down, hits the phosphor on the back, which excites it, it glows. We look at it from this side, which means the light has to get through the whole layer of phosphor on the glass, and then we see it on this side. It's actually brighter on this side, but unless we climbed inside the picture tube, we can't see it from this side. So what this is they rejiggered it. They kind of took one of these, and they took this front, and they sort of folded it out and flattened out the glass. So what we see here is the inside of the picture tube. That's the back of the phosphor. Normally we'd be like looking at this side. So the electron beam comes through here, and we're looking at the active surface of it. Which, so why is that important? This makes a brighter picture with less energy. This battery operated. You want your battery to last as long as possible. Oh, and I should explain, this is pre-liquid crystal display. This is a picture tube. This is a cathode ray tube. This is a liquid crystal. This is more interesting to me. Now that's an early liquid crystal, and may have some interesting technology. We'll take a look at that. But let's see what this guy can do first. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll try not to screw anything up. So it looks like it takes these AA or AAA. Doesn't say. I'm guessing they're AA. A little bit of corrosion on one of the terminals. I'll go dig up some batteries. AA or equivalent. Okay, cool. This thing here, it says pull. I think this is a kickstand for it. Yeah, there we go. So here you could prop that up on your lunch break and enjoy some TV. And a little speaker down here. Looks like we tune it on the side here. It has UHF and VHF. And yes, it is a Sony. Volume. That's cute. The volume indicator is completely mechanical. There's just a piece of orange plastic that goes up and down when you move this. Built-in antenna. Oh, it's also an AM radio. Radio tuning here. These are not rare by any means. These are not expensive by any means. And it's pretty easy to find one in mint condition. Why? Because at the time these came out, they were a cool novelty. I guess a lot of them were given as gifts. But in terms of practical, like actually using it and enjoying it, not so much. For one thing, why would you want to have a portable TV when you're out and about? In bright light, I expect this is going to be very difficult to watch. It's also a very small screen. So, yeah, you could take it camping, I suppose, if you want to lug around this thing. So, and the screen is super small. This I could see being slightly more useful because it's a much bigger screen, being 3-inch. But, and it's liquid crystal, so it should have a longer battery life. But again, it's kind of a silly thing. Hence, I never saw one. I mean, now, yes, we all stare at our phones and watch movies on them and such, but at least it's color and high resolution. This is a flip top, and it has a mirror. That's interesting. I thought the mirror was going to be in the top and the active screen down here, but no, the actual active display is in the lid, and you watch a mirror down here. That, at least I think that's what I'm seeing. That seems bizarre. Much simpler controls than the Watchman. So it doesn't have a manual tuning, it just has up-down. So it's going to be totally digital. Date difference? Boy, this thing's heavy. This, 1984. Wow, that's earlier than I thought. Whereas this is going to be 90s, I expect. Batteries are a little more... Oh, I do have the AC adapter for this. I believe this is compatible. That's good because it takes a NiCad battery pack or something like that, which I don't have. I guess I can take AA's too. But it might be NiCad double. I'm just reading what it says here. It says Casio NiCad battery or Casio AC adapter, so I don't know if this would work. 0.5 volt times 3, L40 I believe is the same as a AA. But then it says Casio NiCad battery. I don't know. I would think they would make something that would work on just plain old AA alkaline batteries. Oh, how does this work? Because it also, not just a mirror, it also has It's in reverse, VHF, UHF. So I'm guessing when this is on, somehow that must indicate what channel you're on. But I also just realized light, this is translucent. Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's do this one first because I have the AC adapter. Now I don't have a transmitter set up, so we're just going to see static for now. But these will be even handier when I'm trying out my home transmitter setup. But for now, we'll just enjoy some static. Alright, that's the antenna input dummy, not the AC input, or DC input. Huh, there's a separate thing that says backlight. Did that get powered separately? Was it an add-on accessory? Well, let's plug her in and see what happens. I got some very bright light going on down here too, so let's get rid of some of that. Okay, it's off. Let's go to VHF operation. There we go. Yeah, wow, it just instantly came to life. So, how is that? Okay, so the light source is ambient light. You can't, if I turn off all the lights, we're not going to see anything. Because there is no backlight. There must have been an add-on backlight for it. So the light is coming through from the back. This is actually the liquid crystal. And then it gets received down here. Where's volume on this thing? Ah. Oh, there's a brightness control. Like I said, controls are a little clunky, a little dirty. Let's see. Oh yeah, there is a little bit of a faint bar on the side to indicate what channel you're on. I'm not sure how well this is all translating. Even in person, it's not all that watchable. Well, I'll put on my test pattern generator. If I bring the output of it near this or clip it to the antenna, I would think something would get through. I think I lost power, that's what happened. There we go. Oh wow, it automatically scans when you first turn it on. I'm trying to find something. I'm on channel 4, it just blew right past it. Try clipping this on. There we go. Alright. It's not great, but it is picking up. This thing has some issues. Oh, there's no sound. Oh, there it is. A very flaky AC adapter. But yeah, wow, you are completely reliant on ambient lighting. If shadow comes by or something, it just ruins your viewing experience. And of course, this is black and white. It's weird as it's scanning through channels. Occasionally I see my test pattern fly by, but it's not on the right channel. It looks like it's picking up a harmonic or something. can see that, but I think that's the best I've been able to get so far. Enough of that. And this is the newer one. I can only imagine how well the much older one is going to work. I'll get some batteries and let's fire this guy out. Alrighty. I have high hopes for this actually because it's going to be a CRT and not an LCD with no backlight. Got my 4 AA. This has some heft to it too. Weighs probably a couple pounds with the batteries in there. Let's see, it's a radio. Seems to work. Kind of hard to tune in.
Here's Pat Beverly.
Yeah.
I understand his story.
There was a group 30 years ago, a group.
2 years in state prison on several gun charges.
Ham radio works
It's
fine.
11:41 coming
TV.
up now trending.
Oh, wow, geez, it's picking up my RF generator already. I mean, my test pattern generator. So yeah, that's actually a pretty bright display. And this is continuous tuning. Just kind of inductively coupling it. Comes in alright. Let's try clipping it directly to it. Again, this is not a transmitter I'm hooked up to by any means. It's just a test pattern generator, so it has limited output capability. Now, there's no control for vertical or horizontal hold or anything, so there's nothing, really anything I can do about the rolling. Let's see. And I'll turn the lights off. Oh. Well, actually, there are no controls. Maybe it was brightness. Oh, there is a vertical hold and a contrast. How about that? Jeez, I would have thought something this new, this modern, would not need any such controls. Okay, that would have made it a lot worse. Hey, we have vertical. Linearity is not so perfect either. Let's try the contrast. Alright. Get the lights again. There we go. Doesn't seem to be a brightness control, but there we go. So I guess this probably is magnetic deflections. It's probably a little itty bitty yoke in there. And it's got some geometric distortions. I'm sorry, it has some geometric distortions. No color, so no color bars. Interesting little gizmo. But I can see why they didn't really catch on. It'll be interesting to see this actually pick up a real broadcast. See how well it works. Something this old. Does it need a recap? I mean, well, I I don't know, there probably are some electrolytics of some sort in there. Even though it's battery powered, there's going to be some probably mostly integrated circuits. Maybe a transistor or two for driving the yoke. Probably nowadays it'd probably be all multi-layer ceramic kind of stuff, but back then those I don't think existed, so there probably are some electrolytics in there. That might improve linearity a little bit, but I'm not going to mess with that. Interesting device. We have two final items, two TVs, which happen to be 7-inch electrostatic that would use that type of picture tube, the 7JP4. They're both Motorola's. This is a classic 7VT2 black Bakelite model. There's also a 7VT3 brown Bakelite, which seems to be less common. This has some issues, but at least cosmetically it looks really nice. All the gold knobs are present. The knobs getting chalky is really common because of the type of plastic they used, but they're often missing or damaged, so that's great. Also, the squiggle logo is there, which is another item that's often got issues. Uses the same type of chassis you've seen me restore many times, the TS18, which is very similar to the TS4. I believe this has been recapped. The main problem it has is underneath the cabinet has some pretty significant damage. There's a chunk gone here, and it's really smashed in over here, and there are some cracks running around. I don't know if this has been glued, and if so, with what. Can't quite tell from this side. But, you know, if it's going to be broken, at least that's in a very non-visible place. And a chunk out the back, well, what can you do? It's not really worth building out with Bondo or anything. There are some scuffs and scratches on the side. It's not perfect by any means, but it's in pretty good condition. The back is missing. Some stuff has been done to it. I don't know what. They drilled the hole and mounted a thermistor over here. It does have a ballast in it. Which is kind of odd looking inside. It still has the old mica and some resistive elements, but I can see there's a power resistor that's inside of it too, and it has been opened up. So some stuff has happened to this. Otherwise, I can't really tell much from the top, but it looks clean. Alright, let's try powering it up. He told me that it did work. It's got the adapter on it and such. I think it hadn't been used not all that long ago. Got it plugged into the PR57. I'm going to turn it on. Well, it's drawing current, so that must still be good. Tubes are all tubes are lighting up. Kind of indication we get on the front here. Dim the lights a bit. Nothing out of the speaker yet. Oh, there we go. Yeah, screen is lighting up. Let's see. Feel around for the brightness. There it is. Not the brightest picture tube. See, I'm on channel 3 with my generator. And there it is. Not very good, is it? Try a different channel. I'm thinking this picture tube might be pretty worn out because it's kind of inverted, and that's what happens when these picture tubes start going south. I remember him saying he had an issue where he couldn't get it to focus anymore. That might be because it's kind of dying, but hey, it does turn on. The linearity is okay. Or not. Actually, no, that's terrible. But there are, let's see, there's a width and a height control. Let's see, I'll reach around the back here. There's focus. Yeah, it focuses just fine. But the centering control doesn't work. Neither centering control does anything. That's weird. I should be moving it up, down, left, right. There's width. There's height. There's horizontal hold. There's no linearity. You get the linearity good by using a good tube. Okay. Promising start. And finally, we have this, a Motorola VT71, which I bet a bunch of you recognize. It's not only have I restored a few of them, it's also one of the most common early TVs, and by early I mean from the late 1940s. This interests me for a few reasons. One, aside from the top, it has maybe the nicest original finish I've encountered, which really shows you how the finish is two-tone. And it's actually got a pretty nice gloss. Yes, there are some chips. Yes, it's got a bit of alligatoring, but I would definitely plan on trying to touch this up. The top needs to get refinished. It's pretty miserable. But the bottom, I think, or the sides rather, and the front, I think could be safe. There's like the finish is just completely gone here. It's down to bare wood. So that's no good. The decal's in really good shape too, and it does have channel 1. Anyway, how old this is and how much this knob has been turned for these numbers not to get worn off is pretty remarkable, and this finish is actually pretty smooth. Now, another reason this interests me is that it's a really early model. It's a TS4-D. D as in dog revision, which I have not encountered before. They made revisions, so there's the base TS-4, then there's a B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and J was the final, and J is by far and away the most common. The early revisions, the B, C, D, E, F, and so on, they went through them really quick. Like they may have only made like 1,000 for any of those early revisions. Let's take a look at the back. Oh yeah, and so the early revisions didn't have fine-tuning. I do have a very early version, which is just the TS-4. I've done a couple H's, and I've done some J's. I think that's it. These knobs are not original. If somebody stuck these all on, I will endeavor to remove them. Sure, they are convenient for making these adjustments, but totally not in stock. It does have the back, which is a nice touch. Has a Hytron ballast, which is probably a replacement. Looks like all the tubes are there. It is serial number 7109. Made something 19 something. It should be. I'm sure it's 1948. April, I think, maybe. I've been maintaining a database of serial numbers and manufacture dates and chassis revisions, so I can probably kind of piece in the missing bits and figure out when this was made. Now, there's something else that intrigues me about this set. And that's what the previous owner told me about it. And that's what he found inside when he went to work on it, and that's why he gave up on it. He said someone in the past had repaired the resistors in an unusual way. This set is full of carbon composition resistors, which typically when they go bad, they increase in value. And a normal procedure is to test them. If they're high in value, replace them. Well, someone, instead of doing that, left the original resistors in place and put a second resistor in parallel to bring the combination of the two into the right value. So let's say it was a 100 kilo ohm resistor, and it had gone up in value all the way to 200K. You could get it back to 100K by tacking another 200K resistor on top of it. He says that's what someone did. Let's pop the bottom off and see if that is the case. But before we do, let's take a look at what actually is down here. So these sets all have a label on the bottom, and that label has evolved over time. The early sets had a label like this, or it shows channel 1. So the tuner has 8 positions. These are your possibilities. You're going to get channel 1, you're going to get channel 2, you're going to get channel 7. For the other 5, you can get 3 or 4, 5 or 6, 8 or 9, 10 or 11, 12 or 13. And apparently that's some type of audio adjustment. Later sets I don't believe had that. And later sets also didn't have the channel 1 cap. So your dealer would set up whatever stations were in your area. And it's pretty common, unfortunately, for these caps to fall off and get lost. That's why there's a bunch missing. Let's see, to get this pan off, yeah, it wraps around, so we're going to have to take all 4, or at least the back 2 chassis screws off. You know what? I'm trying to remember. It would be kind of silly if you had to take all the chassis screws out to get this bottom cover on. The reason they have this big cutout here is so you could service that without pulling the chassis. So perhaps we can just take the back 2 off, and then it slides out. It's been a while since I've done this, and these are very often missing as well. Alright, so I'll grab a nut driver, see what I can do. Yes, indeed, you can just take off the back 2 screws, and I did have to loosen these 2 a little bit, and then you can slide that pan out. Yeah, the front 2 are notched. Okay, that makes sense. Alright, what do we got? Huh. Interesting. It's very common to use ASC capacitors to replace the original high voltage caps, but I've never seen them in this flat style. And why did they double up 2.0047s? The original value was 0.005. So why did he use 2.005s in parallel? He effectively doubled the original capacitance, and then also 8,000 volt caps, which is fine. I mean, it didn't hurt anything, but that's kind of odd. Boy, it looks like they put a black dot on all the parts that were tested. Kind of ruins the original look. Oh well. I do not see what he described, though. Oh, wait, yeah, okay. There's one instance of it. I'm not really seeing any others, though. Seen a bunch of stuff I'm not crazy about, though. But I'm not seeing it being a big issue, what he was saying. I thought I'd be seeing it all over the place. I've seen worse. I mean, there's some fine stuff. Okay, they added a fuse holder, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not sure what this ceramic cap tacked in here. It's an odd mix of polystyrene and polypropylene, orange drop, and I wouldn't have replaced these if at all possible because the originals are kind of specialized. And they should also be 1000 volt micas, and these are not, I don't think. This might only be 250 volt micas. Is it small? Yeah, this is a 300 volt micas. That's got to go. Bummer. Well, I'll deal with that some other time. I just wanted to see. I was expecting to see some horror show of all kinds of crazy resistors tacked in place, but it's not that bad. Finally, I did get some other odds and ends, including some novelty radios. This is a little faux boombox, and well, that is a radio, and a couple vintage Midland walkie-talkies. But we could play around with those some other time. I think that's enough for now. I'm a little overwhelmed by this crazy assortment of technology. But hey, it's neat to branch out from just looking at stuff from the 40s and 50s. So we just spanned tubes from the 20s to basically almost present day. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It was cool to finally actually hold and play around with a Sony Watchman. I do remember when these came out, but I never had the opportunity. Thanks for watching.